Hello everybody, Gabby Turner here with Astro Hi-Fi, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the upcoming total lunar eclipse in Taurus, which is going to be at the exact same degree of Uranus at between 16 to 17 degrees of Taurus, which makes it a very notable eclipse. This eclipse happens on November 8th, which is also the day of the midterm elections in the United States, and I try not to focus, unless I'm doing something that's specifically about the U.S., like the United States Pluto return, not to focus too much about things like that when I do these lunation videos, because there's a lot happening in the world all over the place. But it is notable that it is happening on the same day, and these midterm elections, certainly the outcome of them will have worldwide implications, because, most notably because they will affect, if we continue to fund the war in Ukraine. And that war, of course, is having a lot of global implications, and could lead to even greater global implications if it continues. So, but I've seen a lot of astrologers talking about this this lunar eclipse, because of its, proximity to Uranus, as being very unpredictable, which is true. That is one of the things about Uranus, is that it is unpredictable, and eclipses themselves are very unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get from an eclipse. Last year I had a progressed eclipse in my progressions, and I was looking forward to it, and I'm not saying that there weren't positive things that came of it, but it brought up a lot of significantly difficult experiences, which I won't get into, and dredged up a lot of things, but sometimes things have to be dredged up, so there can be, I suppose, positive results, or forward movement. Necessary forward movement can sometimes come of difficult circumstances happening, if we want to be optimistic, right? I'm not supporting blind optimism, but sometimes you just have to look for the silver lining. But I think, with Uranus, some of the unexpected things that may come of it, we can see coming. And, yeah, Uranus is unpredictable, but at the same time, it's like if a meteorologist, for example, predicts a lightning storm. Well, we know that a lightning storm is going to come, but you don't know exactly where lightning might strike. You can't predict all of it, but there are certain elements that, of course, you can see coming up. You might be able to predict a tornado, but not know exactly what the path of the tornado is going to be, or the specific impacts of that tornado. But I think some of the things that we see coming in terms of midterm elections are not going to be completely surprising. But the other thing that I would like to point out about it is that a transit doesn't just impact things on the day that it occurs. So it isn't just like the elections themselves might be Uranian in some way, although they definitely could be. You could see a lot of rebellion happening on that day. You could see chaos. You could see upheaval, and things like that. But you could also see those things being expressed perhaps in the way in which people vote. The votes that people make could be votes that end up rocking the boat, because in astrology there's something called electional astrology, which doesn't actually have anything to do with elections per se, but if you have an event that's occurring, like a wedding, for example, you might seek out an astrologer to help you choose a date and a time and a location for that wedding that will bring about the most favorable marriage based on the astrological placement at the time of the wedding. So that's an election. You're electing a specific moment for an event to happen because you're hoping that the astrological placements, if they are favorable, will bring favorable results to whatever that event is about. So with an election, nobody decided the date of the election over November 8th based on these astrological placements. It just happens to happen on that day. But we can see it in the same light that whatever happens on November 8th in terms of the elections will have repercussions that continue to unfold. Like first you have the wedding and then you have the marriage, right? So we have the events happening on November 8th, which are people casting their votes. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be casting their votes, including myself, because I got a mail-in ballot for myself. But a lot of people will be casting their ballots beforehand, and then we'll start counting the votes on November 8th, right? Or we'll continue. The majority of the votes will be counted hopefully within a few days of November 8th. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that what happens on November 8th, these seeds are going to be planted under those transits, under the transit of Uranus being conjunct the lunar eclipse. And of course, this lunar eclipse is also really highlighting this long-standing square that we've been having between Uranus and Saturn, which is it's a sort of ongoing tension between the old and the new. That we're really on this precipice where, on the one hand, we have Saturn and Aquarius saying, we need to be looking towards the future because Aquarius is a futuristic sign, but we need to be looking towards the future regarding what can be sustained and what is manageable and what has structure and permanence, because that's what Saturn itself represents. So Saturn is trying to wisely prepare the way for the future. And then we have Uranus in Taurus. Uranus wants to disrupt things, to break things down which are no longer working. Uranus is also about technology. Uranus always wants new and better and improved forms of technology. And in order to do that, you have to kind of like let go of the older forms of technology. And Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Another metaphor that I think is great for Uranus and Taurus is if you think of the plow that breaks the ground before you're going to plant. If you're going to plant a garden, you have to plow the ground. You have to till the soil. You have to break up the soil, right? And make it ready for planting. So that's what Uranus is trying to do. And in particular, Uranus is breaking up things that normally are quite stable, because Taurus is a sign of stability. It is a fixed earth sign. It is the most stable sign. Earth is the most stable element. And the fixed signs are the most stable or have the most permanency or immovability. That's why they're called fixed. So Uranus is taking something that is incredibly difficult to move, Earth, and moving it. And then, in a literal way, moving the Earth, but also in figurative ways. Such as bringing, obviously, a lot of disruptions to the material aspects of life and our ability to have the creature comforts that we so like. Taurus also has to do with both sensual delights, but also just physical comforts. I'm going to be more physically comfortable if I have nice, cozy furniture, and even better if it's also, beautiful or aesthetically pleasing furniture, because Taurus ideally, as a Venus-ruled sign, likes to have all of those things. First and foremost, Taurus wants, it's like, I need to have food, right? I need to have food and shelter, the things that make life easier. I need to have access to water. But if, in addition to that, these things could also be beautiful, if I could have a beautiful piece of pottery you know, a beautiful plate to eat my food off of, if my food itself could be sensually delightful in the way that it looks, in the way that it smells, and its textures and its taste, you know, if it can delight all of the five senses, then that's going to be the best of all possible worlds. But Uranus, of course, is bringing so many disruptions, and therefore is disrupting the ability to experience the world in this sort of place of material comfort. So those, you know, we have this ongoing square between Saturn and Aquarius and Uranus and Taurus, but they're sort of working together at the same time in this sort of push and pull of the square aspect to bring about something new. We also have Jupiter right now just hovering back and forth at the midpoint of Saturn and Uranus. And the midpoint of these two planets is very notable because it's right at the very end and subsequently the very beginning of the zodiac. So Jupiter, as I speak, is retrograding back through Aries, which it's already gone into Aries, the very beginning of the zodiac. And it's retrograding backward into Pisces. At the lunar eclipse, I believe it will be at 29 degrees of Pisces again. So again, it's like that very precipice between the very end of the zodiac, which is the end of Pisces, and the very beginning of the zodiac, which is the beginning of Aries. So that highlights, I feel, even further that we're at some very significant stepping off point into like a new world, a new reality, a new way of being. And I want to talk in another video more about that Jupiter placement, because it also happens at something that's called a Gandanta point in Vedic astrology, which is very interesting to talk about. When you move from any water sign into a fire sign, those are especially potent transits. But again, I'm going to talk about that in another video, and just more about that Jupiter placement, because it's very interesting. But one thing I wanted to mention in this video, and it's just come back into my brain again, is that I feel with Uranus also, yeah, there's the unpredictability. Yeah, there's the sense of rebellion and change and things breaking apart, you know, like breaking the ground to sow something new, to plant a new reality, a new way of being. But I feel like Uranus also has this spirit of the Zeitgeist. And a Zeitgeist is kind of like, it's just a wave, a sort of unstoppable wave that sweeps people up. If we look at various moments through history, these moments when, for example, you can have a zeitgeist in terms of an artistic movement, when lots of artists seem to be sort of aligning along certain artistic principles. That's a form of a zeitgeist. You can have political zeitgeists, but it's a moment when it's like the winds of change are sweeping a lot of people up in them. And generally the connotation with the word zeitgeist is that it's a sort of beautiful, being swept up in a sort of beautiful way. You know, the winds of change, in a way, sort of like sweeping people together, you know, bringing people together through some sort of shared vision or shared understanding. Which I think is a little bit different from a bandwagon or a mob mentality, which is more about, in a way, people not thinking for themselves. I think a zeitgeist has more of an energy of shared aspirations. A mob mentality is more about shared frustrations. And we may have both of those things happening with Uranus. I think it could symbolize both. But I do want to mention, like, you know, at all points of the spectrum of what this eclipse conjunct Jupiter could represent. The zeitgeist is certainly one of them. So that's it. I suppose we'll have to wait and see exactly what will come of this eclipse. For me, it's happening on the exact day of my Venus return. My Venus is returning in opposition to this eclipse. And I don't know about you guys. If you've gotten this far in the video, you can let me know how your Venus returns usually go. Generally, I cast my Venus return chart and I'm like, there's nothing going on here. And then the year plays out and it's like, yeah, nothing Venusian is really going on for me. But this year, my Venus return is crazy. It's on the day of an eclipse, in opposition to that eclipse, and, you know, making all of the aspects that the eclipse, you know, is making. Squaring Saturn, trining Jupiter and Neptune, whereas the eclipse is sextiling Jupiter and Neptune. Conjoining the sun, whereas the eclipse, of course, is opposite the sun. So anyway, that's just a personal thing, but so that, I mean, I think that's basically all I have to say. We're at 16 minutes and counting. I think that's appropriate since this eclipse is going to be at between 16 and 17 degrees. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.